So, about 6 years ago, this clip of a talk Joe Rogan had with Brian Cox was released. I know I'm a little late to the party, but I just came across the clip, and there were a few things I found very insightful, but also some things I disagree with. Now, if you don't know who Brian Cox is, he is a physicist and a popular television personality who has appeared on many science programs. While he specializes in particle physics, he is generally very knowledgeable, and so I was very interested in hearing his perspective on God. So let's get into it.
Well, I think the distribution of information has changed so radically over the last couple hundred years, and particularly over the last 20, that you're seeing these trends now where more people are inclined to abandon a lot of the, even if you remain religious or you keep a thought or a belief in a higher power, people are more inclined to entertain these concepts of science and to take in the understanding of what has been observed and documented
Yeah.
and written about among scholars and academics. And there's more people accepting that. If you look at
Yeah.
the number of agnostic people now as opposed to 20, 30 years ago, it's rising, it's changing. And I think there's also, because of you and because of Neil deGrasse Tyson and Sean Carroll and all these other people that are public intellectuals that are discussing this kind of stuff, people like myself have a far greater understanding of this than I think people did 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And that trend is continuing, I think, in a very good direction.
Yeah.
Certainly, as technology and communication have advanced, access to more advanced knowledge has become easier and easier. And, as Joe mentioned, there has been a notable trend towards agnosticism and atheism. A Pew Research study found that just from 2007 to 2023, the number of religiously unaffiliated individuals in the United States rose from 16 to 29%.
I mean, I don't, what we should say is that science, we don't know all the answers. So we don't know where the laws of nature came from. We don't know why the universe began in the way that it did, if indeed it had a beginning. So we don't know why the Big Bang was very, very highly ordered, which is ultimately, as Sean Carroll, actually, you mentioned him, often points out, and he's right, that the whole difference, the only difference between the past and the future, the so-called arrow of time, is that in the past the universe was really ordered, and it's getting more disordered, and that's that necessary state of order at the start of the universe, which is really the reason that we exist. That's the reason, because the universe began in a particular form. We don't know why that was, so we will probably find out at some point, and it'll be something to do with the laws of nature. But so I'm always careful. I don't want to. Science can sometimes sound arrogant, right? It can sometimes sound like it's the discipline of saying to people, "Well, you're not right."
Yes, yes.
And it's not the discipline of saying you're not right. It's saying this is what we found out.
Yeah.
So
This is an important point. I feel like sometimes we get so caught up in how much we have learned about the universe that we forget how much we don't know and how much we could be wrong about. And I would take this a step further to say that there are some things that science is fundamentally incapable of explaining. And unfortunately, I think this is maybe true for the big questions in life, like how the universe came to be. There is no guarantee that the laws of nature are the end all be all of everything. Perhaps some super universal force created the laws of nature, and in that case, science is no longer applicable.
I like to say that it provides a framework within which, if you want to philosophize or you want to do theology or you want to ask these deep questions about why we're here, you have to operate within that framework because it's just an observational framework.
I disagree with Mr. Cox on this point. His assertion that philosophy and theology must operate within the scientific or observational framework is flawed, in my opinion. I like to think about this like a video game. A video game can have a bunch of rules and physics that the players could learn about and understand. But no amount of information about the physics and programming of the game will explain who created it or why it was created. So, my point is that since we exist within the universe, we can learn about the universe as much as we want, but there could still be forces acting beyond the scope of this universe, like God, for example, that cannot be accounted for by science. So, subjects that specifically pertain to forces which may be super universal, like religion or philosophy, cannot strictly confine to a scientific framework.
So
Yes.
everything we've said is stuff we've discovered. It's not stuff that someone made up, right? We understand nuclear physics. We can build nuclear reactors, for example. So we understand the physics of stars. So we understand that the stars built the carbon and oxygen, and we know how they did it. We can see it because, as I said before, we can. If you look far out into the universe, you're looking way back in time, and as you look back in time, you see less carbon and less oxygen. So we have a direct observation that in the earliest universe there wasn't any because we can see it, and now we see that there is some, and we know how it was made. So I think it's important to be humble when you're talking about science, and you're not saying this is the way that it is. I mean, you are in a sense, but it's not able to answer ultimate questions at the moment. It's not able to answer even whether the universe had a beginning or not. We don't even know that. And I was asked to give a talk to some bishops in the UK about cosmology. And I said, yeah, that'll be great fun. And so I went and gave him this talk. And at the end, I said, I've got some questions. So if the universe is eternal, and it might be, it might not have had a beginning. If it's eternal, what place is there for a creator? That's a good question.
Right.
They didn't have an answer, of course, right?
An eternal creator.
I am not a physicist, nor a philosopher, nor a theologian, but I think the answer here is rather simple. If God is all powerful, then he could have created a universe that seems to be eternal from within the universe. Just like how I could create a world in a video game that seems to be eternal from within the video game.
But I think that it might be eternal, and
Right.
we might discover that. So we don't know at the moment, but we might. So I think my point is that these other human uh, desires, it's very natural to religion's a natural thing, right? People, you see it all across the world in all different cultures. But I think that in the 21st century, religion needs to operate within that framework. If it's going to operate, there are still great mysteries, and it is appropriate to think about what it means to be human. And I've given you my view of what it means. But
Again, I disagree with this point, but I see where Mr. Cox is coming from. Dropping the scientific framework is essentially saying that literally anything is possible. So then the question becomes, how do we know what is true? Honestly, I am not sure that it is possible to prove anything to be true. In our everyday lives, we operate as if the scientific framework is a source of truth because it has practically worked in the past. But with religion, ultimately, I think we just have to rely on our own intuition and examine the core claims of the religions we consider. At the end of the day, though, I think you just have to take a leap of faith.
I don't think the problem comes when your theology or your philosophy forces you to deny some facts, some measurement. These things are measurements. We're not saying it's not my opinion the universe is 13.8 billion years old. We measured it. It's like having an opinion between the distance from LA to New York. You can't have an opinion on that.
I will go back to the video game example. I could create a game in which the mechanics and lore of the generated world suggest it's 30 million years old, when in reality, I just created it yesterday. If we are talking about God as an all powerful, unfathomable being, we must consider the possibility of his existence while understanding his ability to do things we cannot understand ourselves.
Right.
We know what it is. And it's the same,
Right.
it's like, these things, people say the earth's flat or whatever. So it isn't, and we've measured it. So it's just stop it. But that doesn't mean you can't be spiritual and you can't be religious. I would say it doesn't mean you can't believe in God or gods, or that's not ruled out.
This was definitely an interesting discussion, but ultimately I must disagree with Mr. Cox's main claim about modern religion existing within a scientific framework. Then again, I could be completely off base. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks.